Greetings. You've probably heard of LEED certification or LEED for homes. That's a building rating system that was invented by today's guest. David Gottfried is known as the father of the green building movement. He founded the U.S. Green Building Council and later the World Green Building Council, which now has over 100 chapters around the world. Together, these groups have likely reduced global warming and our ecological footprint more than any other groups in the world. David is the author of Explosion Green, Greening My Life, and Green to Green. He built, actually retrofitted, the highest LEED Platinum home. That record didn't last for long, but it lasted long enough so that there were several articles written about his house and a discovery video, which you can still find to this day online. David, thank you for agreeing to this interview. This is a real privilege for me and quite an experiment for the Energy Geek.
We'll see how it goes.
For the last year and a half, I've been building a website that focuses on clean energy and it focuses on positive things that people are doing. I interview different people who have done different things related to renewable energy and sustainable building and whatnot. And Mark told me about you, and I figured it sounds like you'd be really an interesting person to hear about what you've done and where you came from and how you got here. So I understand that you started Green Building Council.
The U.S. Green Building Council.
U.S. Green Building Council. When was that?
Also the world one later on.
Tell me how you came about that whole, green building thing.
So I studied solar engineering in college. Mm-hmm. And that was, I don't want to date myself too much, but in the early years of solar, decades before it became cost effective. Mm-hmm. And as a solar engineer, you fall in love with the sun. You learn that it can provide and be economic and it's available. So let's just capture it efficiently. And in those days, we had to build a little model of a net zero home. And believe it or not, I did that in about 1980. So it was pretty early. Mm-hmm. Then I became a real estate developer for 10 years in Washington, D.C. and learned that business. And then around 91, when the market was crashing, we were looking for new opportunities. And right at that time, the American Institute of Architects Committee of the Environment had started, and they were looking at the new field of green building, which wasn't even defined as green building yet. And they were looking at life cycle assessment and interesting calculations to understand the environmental impact of buildings. And both in terms of initial manufacturing, construction, operations, and end of life, and this new idea of cradle to cradle. Mm-hmm. So there wouldn't be waste. And so we got all excited. We learned England had a rating system called BREEAM, and me and a few others, Mike Italiano and Rick Fedrizzi, we started the U.S. Green Building Council in 93. We learned from England, which had a rating tool, but we wanted to create an organization to develop the US's rating tool, which became LEED, and have the two go together. And we kicked off in 93. Mm-hmm. The world group I started later in 98 because Japan was bugging me and they wanted a Green Building Council. So on Earth Day in 98 in Tokyo, I thought, well, we got the US and now Japan. This is going to go global. So I'll found the world group. So that's a little story and a lot of years ago.
I understand between those two, they've saved more in terms of a carbon footprint probably than any other organization on the planet. So that's pretty successful. I was reading about that before before our conversation today.
That's what Paul Hawken has said in his foreword to my book, Explosion Green. It's hard to calculate, but certainly we've impacted probably more than $1 trillion of real estate globally. LEED is in about 165 countries, and we have GBCs, Green Building Councils, in about half the world. So it kind of went crazy.
Mm-hmm. So did this come about before, after, or during the time you were building your house? It must have been, your house must have come after.
Much after, because the idea of LEED, I wrote a white paper, which wasn't even called LEED. It was just, hey, the US needs a rating system for green buildings. And we delivered that at our founding meeting in '93. And then LEED committee formed in '96. '98, we got some money from the Department of Energy to pilot it. And 2000, the LEED pilots showed up. And in about 2008, 8 years later, David's LEED Platinum home, which was a renovation of a 1915 Craftsman in the Berkeley, Oakland area. And for about a minute, it was the highest rated LEED Platinum home.
Oh, okay, for a minute. That's cool. That's great.
Yeah, it was a passion project that pushed my marriage hard because I did about 110 measures and couldn't stop myself from doing more and more and more to conserve and spend less and less and less.
You wrote a book about that? Is that correct? Is that what
that appeared in 2 of my books. My second memoir was called Greening My Life. What is a green life and how does David get one? Does he have one? And wrote a chapter on it there. And then later I wrote Explosion Green, which is the 20-year story of the green building movement. And I threw that chapter back in that book because it's such a playful, fun one. If you're going to renovate a home or you love green building or green homes, it's a fun chapter to read in Explosion Green. And it's not all up and fabulous. It talks about things that didn't work, my kind of NASA laboratory experience with different things, including my gray water system under the house. And the day it turned on, it was under our bedroom and the pump kicked on and my wife and I just exploded out of bed and said, "What is that?"
It was really loud?
Oh yeah,
wow.
Way loud. And we ended up having to move it to the garage. The thing was too complicated. It never worked really.
You want to tell me a little more about the house and some of the specifics of it?
Sure. It was a passion project, beautiful old house that was a kit in 1915 in the Rockridge area of Oakland, right at the Berkeley border, and had one owner. So when we bought it, it needed a ton of work, and it was a pretty much complete renovation, but using LEED and also the California Green Point rated system, and they're kind of different. So that was fun. But we went at everything. In terms of energy, we blew in cellulose into the walls because they weren't really insulated and super insulated. That was fun. We changed out the old single pane windows with dual pane windows that still look Craftsman. We did an air blower test.
Blower door.
It was fun. I remember going up into the attic and he could show you where all the air loss was going. And he ran around with his like pink foam. He would stuff all the holes. And by the end of the day, he had halved the air loss. And he figured the payback period for that expenditure, which I don't remember exactly, but it was under $1,000.
I was going
But
to
he
say
thought that
payback was about 10 minutes.
I would say 3 months.
It's really quick.
But that was fun, and it's the best thing you could possibly do. You start with that, especially in an old home. And that insulation is great. And what it did is it made the home quiet to street noise, and on super hot days, it just stayed thermally tight and cool. And we didn't have air conditioning. You didn't really need it except 4 days a year. So we did that. We did.
Did you put a ventilation system in?
We did, to get rid of the heat. An exchanger. We did LED lights throughout, even though it was a craftsman. We changed out the water heater and did a solar hot water system integrated with the PV system. And it was from Germany, this Phoenix system you might know.
Mm-hmm.
So when the tank water was, let me get this right, was cooler than the water circulating, it would heat up the water and the solar hot water to interchange with the PV.
Do you recall how much PV you had on there?
I don't remember exactly. It was a small house, and we put between the solar hot water, which actually had a better return on investment than the PV, although the PV had the tax credit. We don't have the solar tax credit on the hot water, or at least we didn't have it then. All mechanical engineers want to start actually with the hot water, but everyone else starts with the PV because it gets the press. And together they're a nice integrated system.
Well, interestingly enough, I put solar on my house here in New Hampshire 5 years ago, and they told me that I was better off. It runs off the solar electricity most of the time. It's a hybrid. It's a heat pump in there, and when the basement gets too cool, the electric heat kicks in, and the electric is either, it's direct solar or it's my net metered solar mostly. We get about 90% of ours. I got a couple of questions. First of all, I got to ask you this. From the late 90s till I started the energy program in 2006, I ran the state's energy codes for New Hampshire. And often when LEED came up, what I would hear is, I really like it, but it's too expensive for me to get involved in. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, thanks for an easy question, Wes. I'm saying that in jest because numbers are my life. And I love finance and business and capitalism. And so when we invented the U.S. Green Building Council and LEED, this wasn't hug a tree, save Earth. If you really want to know the truth, we want to help Earth and certainly reverse climate change. But the only way to prevail in the US for sure, and maybe the world, is the economics. And so you can make LEED highly economic. And those who say it's not economic, I believe they haven't sharpened their pencil enough.
Okay.
And you got to go at it hard. So you have to understand the payback periods on every measure and the integrated system of payback. So something might have a longer payback, but something with a shorter term can subsidize it, but that longer term one makes sense. Maybe the new windows. New windows are not immediate. The air blower and the foam and the weather stripping is fast. PVs work now. In fact, you don't even have to have a first cost for your photovoltaic system. You can have someone else finance it and lease them, and they throw them on your roof in a 17-year deal. So there's no first cost.
We got financing. We own it. We don't have a lease, which is better investment, I think. But we didn't pay a nickel out. We got a loan till our tax credit came in, and then we have a 12-year loan, which when you add the loan in our current electric bill, it's less than we were paying before, and the rates have gone up in the last 5 years. So,
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
I remember consulting to the city of Berkeley, maybe in a session we did 15 years ago. And I said, if you guys are really smart and you're progressive, which you are, get the city to fund the solar on all the roofs in your community. This is before PACE and all those things doing that, because the return on investment is guaranteed, doesn't fluctuate with this stock market. It's not volatile. And the yields are much higher than the cost of capital. And so PV, and not everywhere, but certainly places like California, is an extraordinarily solid investment. So our heat pumps that you mentioned. So there are just so many things that make sense and pencil out. And as you go through LEED, you just have to pay attention to that. Where's the money? Certain measures might be too expensive, so don't go for those points. Some construction firms know the return on investment or payback per LEED credit, and they are very sophisticated. They have modeling tools. They can take you through it. Even in the beginning of LEED, the first city that really jumped in was the city of Seattle. And they were requiring LEED silver for all their civic buildings. And they found, after they had done a few of them, that the cost kept coming down for LEED because they knew how to do it. They could efficiently do the documentation. And at some point, they got it so it was almost no extra premium. Now, gold and platinum, certainly platinum, you're starting to look at longer term investments. But you have to also consider, if you're going to sell that house, if you're going to lease up that building, those tenants, the buyers are getting more sophisticated. They want solar. In California and other jurisdictions are demanding solar. They want healthy air quality. They don't want all that off-gassing for their kids or their tenants. They want daylighting. They want just an overall healthy, super efficient building. Water, they care about water. They want it to be efficient and clean. They want the ability to recycle. And in the tech world out here, which is most of the NASDAQ, is Apple and Google and Adobe and Amazon and Microsoft. These tenants are sophisticated. They want the $1 million engineers. Well, these people care about it and they live in their spaces. So they want a story. They want it to be progressive. They care about the quality of the HVAC and the controls and the daylighting for sure. And they don't want glare on their computer screen. So they need control. So green is just about value. It's about health of the planet, health of the people. And ultimately, economics is about health. I mean, look at what's gone on with this virus. The stock market originally crashed like 35%. Then it came back. Well, today it crashed again because the second wave is coming back. And we're fearful of the health and the impact on the economy. Well, green building is about health as well. And so ultimately, health and economy obviously are linked, with the Dow going down 709 points today. I imagine we lost hundreds of billions. That's about health. And ultimately, we need to align health of people with health of buildings, with health of planet, with health of economy. And the healthy economy equals health of people and planet. It's just a simple equation. But we built the wrong economy decades ago that valued economics more than health. And now we're in a realignment. And LEED is part of that. And if you don't get it, you don't believe it, then take all your money out of the bank and put it under your mattress. But the sun is here, and there's a return on investment in the sun and the health, and that's the future. And that's where the billionaires of the future will be. This is very much an economic hedge.
Cool. Very interesting perspective on it. How was it back when you built your house, finding a contractor who understood what you wanted to do and would work with you to do it?
For me, that was easy, Wes, because
You're the right people.
I'd been in green building for 15 years when we undertook the house. I went to the local solar and green building and architecture meetings, very much part of my community.
Sure.
And so I already knew who was progressive as a builder and progressive as an architect. And I was able to go to someone who was a colleague, a friend, and he liked the idea, and he brought the architect along with him. And he was just phenomenal, that company. And we went through the 110 improvements together, which was hard. And it's a renovation of a 1915 home. So you open up the wall and you don't know what you're going to find.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The reason I ask this is it sounds like California is 10 years ahead of New Hampshire, maybe 20 on a lot of this stuff. And one of the issues we have here is I did a deep energy retrofit on my house and put solar on it, and the value of the house barely went up according to the bank. They don't know what to do with it. And the realtors don't know what to do with it because nobody's, not that I want to sell, but it's this sort of cycle here. You know, there isn't a big demand for this kind of housing. And so the realtors don't play it up and the builders don't make an extra, you know, it costs them more and it takes more time and more thought, I think, to build this. So there's no incentive there particularly for them to do it. And it sort of goes around in a circle. I was just interviewing somebody who was talking about what a hard time they had finding a builder that would build the kind of house we're talking about. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, I know New Hampshire is different than California, but how would I go about it? Maybe you did this. First, we have U.S. Green Building Council chapters almost everywhere. So I imagine we have a New Hampshire chapter.
You do? Yep.
So you get on their website, you see who the members are. And I imagine there's 5 builders who are members on that website. So right there, in less than 1 minute or 2 minutes, I found 5 builders who are members of the USGBC.
Okay.
So then I get on their sites and I start seeing, do they have a navigation tab button that says green building? Do they have case studies? Do they have awards? Do they have staff listed, head of green building? Have they written any articles? Do they have any awards? Maybe I get on the usgbc.org's website, I put in New Hampshire State, and I see who all the members are there. And then I can get an email and a name, and I know who to contact. I Google it, top builders in New Hampshire for green building. Literally in 10, 15 minutes, I've got 5 contacts. I call an architect I know and say, who's the best at this? Mm-hmm. I Google best LEED platinum home in New Hampshire, And then I find out who the builder and architect were. And maybe they're not in my city or my area. I say, well, who's the best in my area? Okay, another 30 minutes. So within 1 hour, I've found the building.
Great. That's a good suggestion. If you had your way, what will we be doing in the future? Where will we be going with all of this?
Where's the movement going?
Where's the movement going?
As we look to the future, I still think we can do even better. We're moving from LEED Platinum to net zero, because in Platinum, you didn't have to be net zero energy. So now you have to have a building that's net zero, because a lot of the states are requiring that.
Is California requiring that?
There is a future net zero requirement, yes.
Good. I know it's in the codes coming up, but
I think it's 2030 we require it in California. So LEED is a bar, but we keep moving the top of the bar, both with economics and improvement, with manufacturers coming out with much better products that are green, and states moving the bar, even investment tax credits moving the bar. So we're going towards net zero, and from net zero, we'll go to positive energy. Water is still a problem and will be more of a problem. So we got to always remember about that. Well, the last 5 years for sure, maybe 10 years, has been about health and bringing health in buildings, raising the volume on that, and having a building that was not just having good indoor air quality and daylighting, but also elevated the health of the occupants through better food, through gyms in the building, through more measurements, and the well building standard, the international well building standard, is hot. You know, because it's also not just about the building, it's about who's in the building and how are they doing. And does the fact that it's a green building improve their health span? And I think WELL is starting to get at that, but they're going from the building towards the person. The last 10 years, I'm working at the person going out towards the building. So where is the intersections? And just as we have sustainable building and green building council for buildings, there are all these functional health, integrative medicine groups that are like USGBCs for health. So it's not just take this drug, go to the doctor. It's what are you eating? What's the sugar content? Are you keto? Are you keto adjusted and a fat burner? What's your blood sugar? We like to stab our finger and get our blood sugar under 85. And everything's related to blood sugar and insulin. And
oh man, I believe it. I know I had all these stomach problems, and I went to a naturopath. He put me on a paleo diet, and I was never hungry. I lost 50 pounds. My cholesterol, and I've been on blood pressure medicine for 10 years. I'm off it. My blood pressure's good. My heart rate is low. My cholesterol dropped from over 200 to 130, 125. I'm almost 69 years old, and my energy level in those years is just up, 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 like Superman's cousin, as the song goes. So
there you go. And those, yeah, awesome, Wes.
Yeah, it is. But I get the connection. I like the connection, and I've found this most interesting. I really appreciate your time and want to thank you. And so I got to ask off the topic. Your wife and Jess are buddies. Is that both being physicians?
Yeah, they met. We all met, but through the schools with the kids, and so they hit it off as doctors together. And Mark went to Stanford, so that's where I did my solar engineering.
I see.
So we share that.
Who's the guy at Stanford now? Who's doing all the? I read this thing. He had this. there's a professor there. He had this thing about how every state, he talked about renewable energy, about net zero for every state, and he crafted the combination of sources of energy sources they could use to do that. And I'm spacing on the guy.
I'm not positive. There was a guy, I think his name was Richardson, who was good, but I'm not positive.
No, that's not it. But that sounds like they have great stuff going on there.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, it was just a love fest of learning. And that's really came into play for green building, all the engineering and the solar studies and the business analysis and becoming friends with internal rates of returns and present values and future values. And my first career is in real estate development for 10 years. So when I talk about economics, I was a developer for 10 years. I know the numbers.
So let me put that aside and ask you another question, which I thought of before and then didn't ask you. Do you know, you must know the group that did Limits to Growth and Donella Meadows and that whole line?
You got to look at growth very hard. Capitalism is embracing growth in sales, growth in widgets, growth in SKUs, growth in profit, growth in market cap. So that's pretty important. But at some point, as we've seen, that endless growth and search for growth actually limits life. And that's what she's writing about. Are there limits, and should there be a limit to growth? And if that growth is killing life and life sustaining, what is life sustaining? Fresh air, water, healthy food, soil instead of dirt. Then you have a problem. So at that point, if growth is killing life and life sustaining, then you can have growth, but it has to be growth in life-sustaining elements, growth in fresh air, growth in solar energy, growth in net zero buildings, growth in my concept that I take off of Amory Lovin's negawatts. Well, he invented negawatts, but I have nega footprint. So from nega watt, which is a watt saved, is a watt generated. Well, a nega footprint is every time you can reduce the ecological footprint, you need the growth of that. But then you need to monetize that. And how do you monetize it? Well, solar is doing that. Water conservation, recycling, the growth in those industries, the growth in recycled content is a nega footprint growth. And so we have to look at it differently so that growth does no harm. And that's really the key.
So what you're really saying then is government regulation, or are you saying there's some way that that individual and companies will do this on their own without regulation?
I believe,
we're getting way into the weeds here.
I believe in carrots and sticks. And I'm not just a government guy. I believe in the private sector. Lee didn't, and USGBC came out of the private sector, and then we invited government to join us. So you need both. You need tax credits, you need codes, you need penalties, and you need golden carrots. So I believe in all of that, not just one thing that drives it.
Cool. Again, thank you very much. This has been really fascinating, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for your great questions and your spirit of green going back to the beginning of solar in the 80s and getting the message out there and getting information to hit some of the myths too, such as you were explaining in your home state, New Hampshire. There's no reason this can't work everywhere. Take care.
Thank you again, David. Have a good one.